and welcome. I'm Chandni, editor at CXM Today, and your host for today. We are thrilled to have you join us as we dive deeper into the topics that emerged from our successful CX Next BFSI summit earlier this year. Off the back of that event, we knew the conversation couldn't just end there, so today we are here to keep it going. We present you the CX Brainstorm, where a panel of experts tackle the BFSI challenges head on. The main focus is on unlocking the full potential of your CX strategies. We all know how important it is to prove the ROI of our brand's CX initiatives. And a question that keeps many CX leaders awake at night: can we truly measure how our investments in technology, people, and training impact the bottom line? So it's going to be an interesting 90 minutes. So make sure you take notes and feel free to drop any questions or reactions in the chat box. And also let us know what other topics we should address at our CX Next Summit next year. And I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and we'll be posing your questions to the panel towards the end. Now for introductions, to lead this conversation, we have David Hicks, Chairman of XMCoach and TMD. He has kindly agreed to steer this discussion and guide us through the important topics. David, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And I will now let him take over and introduce you to our panelists and keep the conversation going.
Yeah,
David?
thanks, Shadney. Thank you. And also thank you, CXN, for pulling this event together. It's not common for events to actually have after parties. I'm sure there's a better word to describe it, but compliments to yourselves. The after party is good, isn't it? So we'll go with that. We'll go with that. You can feel, can't you, the intellectual horsepower, the nervous anticipation on this call with such a distinguished panel that are going to be answering your questions and covering the points that are of most interest on the call. So without further ado, I'm going to be inviting each of them to take a little time, maybe a bit longer than usual, 3 or 4 minutes, to describe their route to their current role, maybe to explain their current role in a bit more detail. And maybe also table if there's a particular thing they'd like to cover. We'll include that in the chat. Can you see chat here? And please add your bits to the chat as we go through the conversation. But we've got Shadney who will be keeping an eye on the chat. I want to see if there are any ideas or themes that you want to table or include as speakers, but also as folks listening in. In terms of listening in, if you would please keep your mic on mute. We're going to be doing all questions through the chat, so please keep any questions to the chat, and Shadney will be reading those. But pile them in along with any suggestions for areas that you want covered. But without further ado, I want to invite each of our esteemed speakers to say a few words about themselves. We're going to start off with Moira. And then we're going to go to Janthana, then to Alex. So Moira, tell us a bit about your journey to, your journey.
Thanks, David. And hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me to join you again. So my name's Moira Clark, and I'm Professor of Strategic Marketing at Henley Business School and Director of the Henley Centre for Customer Management, which is a consortium of companies who are interested in leading edge best practice in customer management. And they basically tell us the challenges that they're facing, what keeps them awake at night. And then we do research reports on that and also run a series of events throughout the year. So we have a lot of financial services companies, telcos, pharmaceuticals, a real eclectic mix of companies. But actually, that's what's so wonderful about it, because they get to learn from each other in a way that perhaps they wouldn't always do so. So I've been running that now for really quite some time. I also teach on our executive education programs and also on our MBA program. I also, do keynote speeches around the world and so forth. But like most academics in business schools, I also work as a consultant, because the philosophy is, how can you stand there and talk about this stuff if you actually don't go and do it? So I also go and do it. But actually, before I joined academia, David, I worked as a consultant based out in Munich in Germany, where I worked there for 4 years. And before that, I worked in industry with the toiletry subsidiary of Dunhill and an international health food company. But my passion throughout my whole career really has been service excellence, customer centricity, customer experience, doing things better for the customer. and helping companies differentiate themselves by doing things better for the customer. So that's why I love speaking at events like this, because or having discussions, because sadly I think there's still so much companies can learn and so much they can still do. And I have to say I had hoped that I'd seen some more improvements over the years, but that's not always the case. There are some great companies out there, but still so many examples when companies could put the customer at the heart of the business and be more customer centric. So that gives you a little bit of a flavour for me, hopefully.
Moira, but thank you again for A, speaking at the event, and B, this afternoon. To spare your blushes, I'll say it. Moira is a bit of a, well, she's a rare and unique resource to have on this call. Someone that's got, she's far too modest to say, a really solid practitioner background, but also a line of sight into best practice and the academic work in this field. So Moira, thank you again, and I'm sure we'll be benefiting from those joint perspectives. So Janthana, tell us a bit about your journey. I looked at your resume on LinkedIn in preparation for this, and that's seriously impressive. So tell us about your journey.
Thank you so much, David. I'm the CEO and founder of Tapoly, and Tapoly provide insurance solution for the gig economy. So in 2018, we were one of the first on-demand insurance provider for the gig economy here in the UK, with partnership with Beazley, which is the second largest insurance syndicate within the Lloyd's of London market. And in 2020, we launched UK first InsurTech specific chatbot. So, and that was a couple of years before ChatGPT was launching their chatbot. And the concept is pretty much more or less the same, except for we wanted to be more insurance specific. So that's basically some of the innovations that we have put together in the last few years. And my background is in investment bank. Actually, I studied business, graduated, become chartered accountant, and worked for a number of years in investment banks until 2016, when I came across an issue where I tried to find insurance for my Airbnb letting, and I couldn't find the product in the market. So with that discovery, I thought, okay, I wanted to solve the insurance gap for the gig economy for people like myself. So start off as an insurance client, to today's being one of the innovator in the industry and trying to help insurance to be more customer focused and helping them to serve the gig economy better.
So you've got, again, a rare perspective of someone's actually led these types of functions in large organizations, and then use that experience and that visibility of a gap to create a very successful new entrant. And it's now a major player in the sector. So glad to have you here and looking forward to your perspective on this, Janthana. So Alex, such august company, no pressure. Tell us about your own journey to your role.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for the after party. I think great idea to follow up on some of these topics that we discussed on the day. I sort of come from a digital design and branding background, and so I have a very different lens. And I am currently head of digital design and experience at Deutsche Bank in the private bank. And I think my journey has been, sort of unplanned and through the ranks, from the sort of the weeds, the foot soldiers, through to senior management, and so I've seen lots of problems with structure and understanding of multidisciplinary approaches that you have in big corporations. And I hope helped to be a bridge between some of those different perspectives over the years. And so what does that mean? It means, I see design as a way to unite different teams with different perspectives together. And design for me is all about understanding your customer and understanding the data, the user journeys, and what they are actually looking for. And if you take a more scientific approach to design, then I've found over the years that you know, you can get buy-in and cross kind of sort of cross divisional support or departmental support for ideas, because ultimately it's about your customer and knowing your customer. And the more you can demonstrate that understanding, the better you can then tailor your experiences or tailor your product, your thing that you're making to those customers. And it's just, it's a no-brainer. If it doesn't matter what department you're in, you're all working to the same vision. So I've sort of used design as a vehicle to build bridges and build relationships between tech teams, marketing teams, or event teams, and you know, where they're often working in silos, they're working independently of each other and not thinking about the bigger whole.
Excellent. So we've got those wonderful different perspectives. Moira, the practitioner with the academic and research insights. Janthana, again, senior practitioner, looking for an opportunity in the market and building a very specific digital offer into the market. And looking at what you've described, Alex, somebody that's using design to get everybody aligned and to actually show that you're delivering what the customers' needs are. I was really impressed by some of the stuff that you shared at the event, showing the sort of, we've got everybody looking at things in the same way, presenting themselves in the same way across a business that's as large and diverse in terms of its customers and its markets as Deutsche Bank. So my compliments on actually, I know how hard this is to get people to just agree to do the same things across the business. So yeah, looking forward to your perspective on this. And for my part, I started life as a milkman. I used to, probably before most of you were born, up at 3 a.m. delivering milk onto people's doorsteps. And pretty soon lost loads of customers. Half of my milk round evaporated, as did any prospect of me succeeding in this business. And I knocked on everyone's doors and said, "Why did you leave?" And they said, "Well, we don't know you. We knew Ken, the guy that was on the milk round before you. We don't know you." So my then girlfriend, later fiance, later wife, we this is before the days of personal computers and personal cell phones. We had printed, the smallest number you could have printed was 6,000 little A5 leaflets, and we put them through the letterbox. Said, "We'd love to be your milk delivery supplier. We're setting up home in this area. Please come to us and tell your friends about us." And we put that through, and we signed everyone, and we put them through people's doorsteps. And I won every one of those customers back. And there were 8,000 milk rounds in this business, Unigate. Every one of them, their sales was either flat or declining. Mine was the only one that started to go up, because I then put these leaflets through everybody else's doorsteps. I had people recommending me talk to their neighbours and so on. And the long and short of it was this approach of talking to customers and asking customers to advocate us and so on meant that my little milk round of 600 customers became 700, became 800. And the branch manager thought I was fiddling. He said, you must be doing something dishonest. So he put a supervisor on there and he said, no, he's sort of cracked the code for this intimacy thing. So the manager said, well, give him a whole section. So a month into this job, I had a team of 8 guys that were reporting to me, and I convinced every one of them to do the same. And every one of those guys kicked off. And within 2 months, I was running a branch in Keynsham in Bristol, and I ended up on the board of this business. I was 29. And the whole of my career has been around trying to scale approaches, practical approaches. How do you build that intimacy with your customers, B2B, B2C? How do you build that intimacy with your colleagues? Maybe we'll cover that as well. There's an employee experience. There's a great article that Gartner wrote recently around total experience. Check it out. Put total experience Gartner into your Google search bar, and you'll see a free, so it's worth looking at, funny because it's a free article from Gartner. The total experience, your customers, your colleagues, your stakeholders all need to understand, to your point, Alex, what is it we're trying to achieve? How do we want people to feel so that there's that persistent, consistent opportunity to execute? So we're going to cover 3 areas that surfaced, listening hard to what folks were saying. How do you build that alignment across the organization? How do you actually get folks to all look at things on the same page. You heard that from Alex, you heard that from Janthana. How do you build that sort of top-down buy-in support that you heard Moira talk to? Maybe using tools like North Star and those sorts of techniques. And then how do you actually show that this translates uniquely into improved business performance? How do you make sure that the experience agenda is seen and known and believed and proven to uniquely drive business results? Because if you remove it, and there's been a lot of that happening in the last year, 18 months, you don't get access to these business results. So you need to really anchor that in tangible outcomes. If you get rid of it, they don't happen. So that was the third area that's of interest. Please, if you'd like to add anything else to our agenda, add them into the chat. That's going to be our mechanic. We're going to take the first of those, if I may, look at mapping, and I'll invite each of the speakers to suggest some examples that they've had, and we're each going to sort of probe into more detail. But before we do, just want to invite Moira, Janthana, Alex. Are there any particular areas in addition to those three, mapping, maybe North Star metrics, you wanted to particularly add to the conversation, or are you happy we start with those three?
I'm happy to start with those three things, David.
Cool.
Here we go.
So, Moira, you've got the mic.
Thanks.
Or happy to hand it to whoever, but let's take a look at how do you build that sort of alignment across a business. Alex mentioned this, Janthana similarly. How do you get folks to actually see what we do for customers in the same way? How do you actually get folks to sort of look at things from a cross business, from a customer perspective, rather than from their own functional perspective? What's been your experience, Moira?
Well, I'm a huge fan of customer journey mapping. I absolutely love it. I think it's a brilliant tool. And I'm also, which feeds into it, a huge fan of customer safaris. And what I mean by that, I'm actually dialing in from South Africa at the moment, but that's not why I'm thinking about safaris. But, you know, getting senior executives to go on safari. And what I mean by that is to go and experience what it's like to be a customer. And, you know, to walk in the customer's shoes. And I literally, when I run programs, I will send people out. They hate it. They don't want to do it. Oh, I've been in this business years and years. I know all about it. I don't need to do that. But I send them out to experience what it's like to be a customer. And it's extraordinary, the insight that they get when they come back. Now, what's staggering, actually, certainly in the UK, David, and I don't know if you've come across this, that many of the banks in the UK, for example, their senior executives don't bank with that bank. You know, they usually bank with other banks. And so they've got no clue at all of how bad things really are. And I think that's true of many senior executives. They're not customers of their own organization, or they don't go out to be a customer. And if you do that, I think you get some extraordinary insights. And then those insights, plus insights from your real customers, in inverted commas, and cross-functional team members in the organization, if you can get that and you can build up an existing view of the customer journey over key touch points, but from the perspective of the customer, you've really got to do this from the customer point of view, not from a company or corporate point of view, and then map out those key touch points. So I'm a great fan of doing that with cross-functional teams, but it's not good enough to just map out the touch points. What I love to do is I love to map out for each touch point, what are the pain points? What are the pleasure points? The emotions, how does it make you feel? And also for each touch point, what is the goal of the customer? What is the customer hoping to achieve at each of these touch points? So I've seen, I mean, there are many, many different ways of customer journey mapping. And, you know, it's just that this is my preferred method, if you like, where I look at what are the main jobs the customer wants to get done? What are the key touch points? What are the pain points? Customer ease is a great one. How easy are you to do business with? How easy is each step for the customer? Yeah. As I said, the emotions, and then what the customer's goals are. And then once I've mapped out where we actually are, then we go through a whole exercise of mapping out the ideal journey, what we want to be. And that is so interesting to do that. And then once we've done that, what I'd love to do, David, is I love to get the customers in, the real customers in. And of course, we would do this for certain target markets. And then the customers come in and they go, it's nothing like that. What do you think? You know, but it becomes a living, breathing document, which is fantastic, you know, and then you evolve it over time. It's not something you do and it's perfect and it sits on a wall or in a cupboard or something. It's something that becomes a living, breathing document in terms of how you.
I want to hold up a mirror to. It's a living, breathing document. It's not something you one and done. It needs to live. The value of mapping seems to be more in the process of actually mapping in a cross-business team rather than the artifact itself.
Yes.
I want to hold the those threads up to Janthana and to Alex. Any points you want to drill down into, Janthana, Alex? Any things you wanted to add or amplify from your own experience of using tools like this?
We don't use any fancy tool in-house. To be honest, we tend to have, you know, we talking about revamping our customer journey, and we want everybody to be on the same page. We just get one of the designers to mark up all the processes, and then of course we go through those processes. And luckily, we are, to some extent, you know, we come from insurance customer ourselves, so we know roughly what type of customer journey we would like to create for ourselves. So we just map our own, you know, like personal need to it. So that's how we basically go about and get everybody on the same page. To some extent, you know, because of my internal audit background, I'm very good in managing tasks and project. So I tend, and also communication is key. So I tend to make sure that everybody know what we are doing. I always very transparent with the information. Most of the information that I have, most key management within the firm would have exactly the same information, because I don't like that time delay or people not receiving the information that they need to receive. And I like, you know, like junior members of the team to also be involved in the process, because we need everybody feedback. So I like that kind of very transparent, clear, and communicative and get everybody involved type of conversation. But in terms of tools, we don't use anything fancy other than that, except for, of course, on the kind of project task management base, I do use many tools for that. Yes.
But it sounds like you're doing this instinctively, Janthana. You mentioned about getting everyone's voices heard, yeah, and getting everybody to be contributing to this is the end-to-end journey. I wonder, Alex, given your experience as sometimes, I'd imagine someone that's sort of taken the product of those conversations, what's been your experience, the power of visually being able to show what it is we do? Have you had the experience of using those sorts of tools yourself?
I have, but in very different ways. So, you know, the organization like ours is ginormous, and we have, you know, different client thresholds or segments of clients, and so it's very different what happens in the retail to a wealth management customer journey. But I mean, to pick up on Moira's comment, I think the more you can exchange shoes, you know, I'm a real advocate for kind of exchanges, and sort of, you know, I'd love the idea of a kind of a job swap for even for a few hours, or for senior management to sit with a junior member of staff and to have a Q&A, or because I think when you spin the perspective on something, you get you learn more. Your bias changes by having these kind of experiences that you're not used to in your day-to-day as a senior leader. So anyway, but back in the Deutsche Bank world, yes, we would use tools like Miro to kind of map out, you know, how either a customer starts off as a retail customer and how you escalate them throughout their life to being a private banking or kind of wealth management customer. And that's a very complicated process, and it takes years, and you can't possibly map that out, but you can map kind of sort of key accelerators, I'd say. So if they're already looking to invest a certain amount of money, and as an organization, we think we've got another product that would, you know, grow their money or be a safe investment for the future, then we will kind of look at a mapping process to accelerate that transition. So it all depends on the audience or the kind of client segment in terms of the mapping. But tools are essential. Workshops are really essential. So you know, when we look at our brand and the perception of our brand in certain markets, we will run a survey. We will look at our NPS scores to get real data, real insights from customers in terms of a touchy-feely kind of response, or how do you think we perform in terms of, you know, say product diversification or communication, or you know, many different sort of topics. And I think those surveys are the key drivers for lots of our kind of strategic initiatives. Internally, they might start with a smaller department, but ultimately they grow through the senior management teams. So, because it's real data.
Well, and I sense again from all three of you saying that it's actually the building of the map, the getting everybody to listen humbly to what customers are saying, creating a mechanism for different voices, different experiences. That's where the magic comes. And we had a really interesting question here that I want to point towards Janthana. But I'm going to give you a chance to think about it, Janthana, and offer my own experience. So the question is, wouldn't a company miss out on critical insights if they chose to build the customer journey map on their own without taking real customers' feedback into account? And your thoughts on that?
Yes, we actually, although we may not ask customer initially when we build the website, but we do analyze our website performance. So all of the buttons and, you know, like customer behavior on our website is being tracked. So we know roughly when we lose customer, we know how long customers spend in certain part of our website, for example. And we track that back to, you know, like the product that we sell. So therefore, we know roughly what type of customer and the type of behavior we would expect for those customers that we can convert. So we do track that. And with that data and analytics, it helps us kind of, you know, like improve our website design. If to some extent, you know, like for some customers, when they come to us and they're asking for a question, at that point, we also take customer feedback. So it's not that we are not proactive. It's just that, you know, like when we initially design, we just go ahead and design based on best practice, based on what we see, you know, like good website design out there. And then over time, we will use data analytics to improve and individual customers' feedback. Yeah.
Can I jump in there, actually?
Sure.
David, thanks. So, Janthana, I'm just curious, though, when people leave, we've done some research at Henley on what makes a perfect online customer experience. And I'm curious to know when people leave the website then, so you know that they've left, but do you know why they've left?
Yeah, not always. So we would have drop off, and sometimes, you know, we would send an email and say, look, hey, you know, like I know that you are looking for XYZ, could we help? And then they will come back and say, okay, I can't find your product that I need, or I don't know what I want yet, or I got other questions. So it would be one of that, type of question. And then that's the part where you need human to interact with customer.
Mm-hmm.
So let me, I feel I know you well enough, and we're amongst friends, to disagree with you respectfully, because the first mention of journey maps, I think, in Forrester and Gartner was at Emirates Airlines about 19 years ago, and I was privileged to lead that. And over the years, if you go to www.customerjourneymap.com, there's some interesting insights there. Don't put it into your search bar, put it into the address bar. And you know, the more I see pretty ornate customer journey maps, the less useful they are. The more scrappy, the more visceral they are, the more in touch with reality they are. And I think to the sort of questioner's point, would you be missing out if you didn't take external insight? A practical example here, a German auto manufacturer who remain nameless, but they've got like 3 points on their logo, and did a map in Ulm, UULM, for one of their products. New car that was coming to market, did the map of the end-to-end experience, and we've got as many people as we could involved in the mapping process. As we finished building each bit of the map, we said, so please initial that you're happy with this bit of the map, yes, and please tell us who we should now be talking to. So we had this sort of self-completing map, right? You're smiling here, Alex, right? And then we got to the end of this with lots of interest and lots of enthusiasm, lots of buy-in to this very scrappy map. And I got the senior marketing lead there, the person that was sponsoring, and said, okay, look, we've identified these moments of truth to Moira's point and these pain points. We really need to go fix those. And this very lovely Germanic senior leader said, no, we've got to research it. And I said, hang on, I mean, it's going to take months to get the research back. No, we must research it. So it took something like 12 weeks, which I think was going pretty quickly actually to get the research out there, commissioned and back, during which time all of the enthusiasm and energy, right, from the mapping process was dissolved and lost, you know? So I do think use mapping in whatever way is going to work, but also keep in mind there's real magic that happens when you get cross-business groups of people to sit down and look at what they do from the customer's perspective. And it's your responsibility as a leader, as an advocate, to make sure that you don't lose that. If you are starting a map, you make bloody sure that you're going to do something with it, yeah? Or you sort of lose that belief in the process.
Sorry, go on. I was just going to say we call that the sort of the entrepreneurial spirit. You know, you need to empower people to make decisions, and when that energy is all accumulated, then you have to kind of act on it as quickly as possible. So yeah, I think that's down to culture. That it's not, sort of right or wrong. It's in terms of the process. It's a culture that has to come from the top through employee branding and the culture of the organization. Moira.
And what I was going to say was, that's why I'm a great advocate of, you can map out these kind of draft maps, if you like, that everyone's inputted into. But then if you bring in a few customers in to just say, what do you think? I mean, that's agile, it's quick, it's fast, you can get it done within a couple of weeks. And some of the feedback you get from that can be really quite insightful. So I have to say, I really would prefer to involve customers at some point and in some way in designing these maps, because I do think that we often take our own baggage to these. I mean, I do a lot of work around vulnerable customers, for example, and whether it's websites or insurance policies or banking, none of us on this call, I don't think, we're necessarily vulnerable people. And so to put ourselves in the position of those kinds of people and to map out an online process without taking them into account is tricky. Or another example, actually, I'm quite badly colorblind. So this is one for you, Alex, actually, because one of my pet hates is the way that people do designs using color. And you would be staggered to know how many companies use red and green. And so I'm on a website, and my husband's going, it's obvious to him there's a red button there to press or to click on. I absolutely just don't see it. I find websites really stressful because they're so colorful now, and the designers all get stuck in there. So it's really lovely and they think it's great. For me, it's a nightmare,
Yeah. I mean, again, accessibility is going to change that. I mean, the European law that comes into effect next June is mandatory.
They've been saying that for years.
I know. We've just shifted everything to a set of principles that is accessible first. So, mobile first was the old kind of, sort of statement, and now it's accessible first. And that as a principle is a kind of a North Star. You don't need a tool. You just need to have that vision and that ambition to design to all user groups with all types of disabilities. And I think that will be the new norm.
I'd love you to try it out on me then. I could be the acid test. It works on me, I'm with you.
Yeah.
That was a really nice link there. Thank you, Alex. You mentioned North Star. Janthana, I'm going to come to you, if I may, with the next question. And thank you for thank you for our listeners for their question. So please keep firing them to Shadley on the chat. But what seemed to surface from the CXN BFSI event, it's another plug for the event next year, was how do you get sort of senior leaders to not just nod, but to actually buy into this, Janthana? What's been your experience as a senior leader, prior to your current role, but in your current role, to actually get senior leaders actively to be leading in this direction, so that the experience agenda actually has the sort of momentum behind it? What's been your experience of that?
Yes. So, luckily I'm now owning my own business. So I set the agenda. So I don't have that issue with, stakeholder buy-in. But when I was working in investment banks in an internal audit department, that was a bit of a challenge. As you know, we're not the most a likable profession within the banks, I would say. So a stakeholders buy-in is something that everybody must be able to, especially, like the more senior you are up the chain, the better is your communication and your analytical skills. So everything we do, we need to be able to prove. And more importantly, we need to be able to justify why it's needed. Because business would only care about profit. So, you talk to a senior leader within the bank, they will say, okay, okay, we miss out a couple of control points. What are the risk impact? And then if you presented the risk impact, it must be the one that would improve the overall performance, either reduce, increase operation efficiency, profit, or it had to add value and not just simply a tick box exercise, because business hates tick box exercise. And I think to be very data driven about your approach, when you show, you just have to have a very clear indicator of where what are the impact on the control breach. So you must say, okay, like we've got a higher churn on customer, or like less profitability because of X, Y, Z. So I think that tend to work well with the senior management. If they know that they can make more money from listening to you and implementing your point, then they will, I think. Yes.
So let me I was just say, bring it right up to date. You've got the sort of privilege now of, this is my company, I lead it. And you can sort of bring to life, this is my vision for the business, and invite people to sort of be part of that. So how do you actually share that? How do you make that part of everyone's day? How do you sort of make sure that folks feel that every time they interact with you online, physically, as partners? I mean, how do you bring that to life?
Communication and authenticity. I think you need to firstly have a very clear goal and objective. You have to be able to be passionate about your goal and clearly communicate that, and as frequent as you possibly can, because it takes time for people to register your message. So you have to be present. I want, although, we are in business of remote working, so everybody in my company are working from home. So that means that being, having your presence when people are working during the day is harder, because we don't see each other. So how do we create a communications forum like WhatsApp, Slack, and making sure that everybody communicate and make sure that they interact throughout the day, I think is important. And any news, I always check good news, because I like, I believe in building a positive energy around, like my workforce, and also the way I do business. I like to believe that by being happy and positive would attract more opportunity, and that's also attract clients. And my team would work more effectively if they are happy at work. So everything is all about having that kind of, like building positive culture that help everybody to do their job more effectively during the day.
So I want
It's
to
a
turn to
lot
you.
more than, yes, it's a lot more than just teaching them how to do that job, but it's actually helping everybody, including myself, to elevate on their personal growth perspective, because we need to. That's what is going to really help them manage their daily challenges and crises. Yeah.
Watching you speak, this is said with real conviction, right? You were saying, I need to be authentic, I need to be persistent, I need to be present, I need to be positive. These are all sort of values that you're clearly living. And I want to sort of turn to Alex, because you'd know better than anybody, these sorts of values don't get embedded unless they've been deliberately designed and then persistently and consistently executed. Alex, what's been your experience of folks in the sort of senior part of an organization being really clear about how we want these things to be conveyed and lived and so on? Does it resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what it sounds like is you're a purpose-led leader, Janthana. You know, you believe in the purpose, you believe in values, as well as the bottom line. And you know, there are brands, corporates that are either purpose-led or they're not, or at some point in their life they will try to be purpose-led, and whether that succeeds will be a matter of whether they're really digging deep into what their purpose is and what their culture should be. So I think that to me is the difference. There's obviously so many other different types of organization, but the purpose is the thing that drives something that is a little bit less tangible. It's the longevity, it's the impact, it's the customer relationship, the depth of that customer relationship, the levels of trust. You know, how many senior leaders are looking at trust as a kind of measure of their product or their service? You know, they just look at the bottom line. Yes, they might do an NPS or some kind of like survey on their brand, but I think all those are kind of less tangible factors are often overlooked, and the companies that really succeed and that are purpose-led, you can really see the difference. But you know, there are other factors in terms of a company's success, aren't there? And purpose is more relevant to certain organizations or sectors.
So let me turn the conversation, Moira. Do you want to sort of come back on the sort of the purpose-led approach? Because I'm thinking in particular post-COVID, is there any sort of research or any evidence that suggests that purpose-driven organizations are becoming more prominent, in particular with some age groups? They just leave, you know. So what's been your experience? Is there any evidence that you could maybe share on that front?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a single, I can't think of a particular research study around that. I'm sure there have been some, but certainly I am aware of the fact that amongst younger generations, that purpose and values are massively important to them. And also not only the values of the organization, but their own values. And, you know, you know, there's a lot of work that's looked at values in terms of the point at which your values no longer match the values of the organization, that's time to go. And sadly, more and more people are making that kind of decision to say, actually, I really don't fit in here. So I think values, purpose, you know, vision, whatever it is that you have is really, really important in order to make that clear and then to communicate that as best you can with everybody in the organization. However, having said all that, I actually did my PhD around organizational climate and what drives business performance from the climate perspective. Now, a culture, as we were saying, is really difficult to get hold of, and it's really I mean, how do you get hold of purpose and values? And they're quite difficult to get hold of. Whereas climate is actually very easy to get hold of because it's about the practices, procedures, and the reward systems. And so it's about actions. What do you do in the organization in order to bring that purpose to life or that vision to life? And there's a lovely quote from Sir Adrian Cadbury, which is, we judge managers by their actions, not their pious statements of intent. So we can all say, oh, of course, accessibility is really important, or of course, ease of doing business, or this is our passion and this is where we want to go. But the English expression is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So do people actually do that? Are their actions speaking louder than words? And I think that's where many companies come down. You can look at their websites and they're full of their purpose, their vision, their objectives, their goals, all of these wonderful things. But actually you go, really? I haven't seen any of that. I can think, I better not mention the brand, but I can think of a particularly financial services brand that goes on and on and on about this sort of thing. And actually, my experience as a customer is it's nothing like that at all. So I think we're great at having these words, but what do they really, really mean? So I think you've got to be clear about your promise. What is it that you are promising people? And then how are you going to manage the behaviors of your staff, your colleagues, in order to achieve those kind of promises, which then impacts ultimately on the customer. As a little aside, actually, sorry, Dave, might be interested to know that with this work that we did, we were looking at what drives business performance. The thing that we discovered didn't drive business performance is employee engagement, right? You go, how? Really? No. And this was a big structural equation modeling we did. So causality we were looking at, not just correlation. And we found that employee engagement did not drive business performance. What drove business performance was organizational climate, the practice, procedures, and the reward systems. And you go, well, why is that? That just doesn't make sense. But what we discovered is that the more employees were engaged, yes, the less the business performance worked. And why was that? Well, because they love their job. They really, really love their job. They're engaged in their job. And actually customers were getting in the way of what otherwise would have been a perfect day. So when we looked at organizational climate in terms of business performance, in other words, customer retention, customer satisfaction, net promoter score, it wasn't there because actually the convenience to what otherwise would be a very nice job. Can I ask though, Janthana, a question, if I may, David? Is that all right? Because Janthana, I'm really interested that you have all these remote working employees. I don't know how many you've got and what age they are, but I'm fascinated in how you're able to do that, especially if you've got a younger profile of people. Do you not feel you need to get them physically together at any point, or do you do that sometimes? Or
I think for IT staff, they like to be together. But even then, like most of our IT staff work remotely quite well. And younger crowd, funny enough, they're so used to work remotely, especially the one that have been graduated in the last couple of years and have lived through COVID. So they haven't really had the idea of how it feels like to be in a confined office space, because they, ever since they graduated, they have always worked remotely and they've been studying remotely. So we have that kind of, like very young crowd, and then more a senior crowd that been working. We used to have an office, to be honest, and up until kind of, midway through COVID, we have office, but we just never really get to go because of the COVID situations. And we decided that we want to be a completely remote a company. And that worked well because it reduced a lot of office costs for us. So we have no office costs and we have more time between work because we don't have to commute into work now. So I can see, like that, that doesn't really impact the performance in any way. If it's anything, people have more time to do other things because they got a spare, hours or so. Yes, that I say. But it's not that easy to get everyone motivated. That's the issue with having remote workers, because when they have questions, rather than ask you straight away, they wait. So there is a, like a slack, the time that they could use to work. So if you work in an office, the number of tasks that you can perform would be faster because you are in, together and you're more focused. But if you're at home, you may do that over a period of longer period. So that's also happened with me.
Intriguing.
Remotely, because there are things that you need other people input. and you have to wait until everybody's, like giving you response, and not everybody check their emails straight away. So that's the issue.
The Gartner paper brings this point to life in terms of purpose-driven organizations and total experience. And it reminds me of my son. He called me one evening. So Thomas is now 34. I know it's hard to believe I've got a 34-year-old son, but yeah, Thomas is 34, and he called me one night. He said, "Dad, I'm in jail." And Thomas finished his environmental science degree and then went to work for Enterprise, a car rental company, and very quickly zipped through the ranks, and he ended up as a senior leader there. And he said, "I want the regional manager's job, Dad, but I can't because you've got to show 3 cycles of your ESQ, so that's your sort of customer colleague scores, trending upwards, or you can't be considered for a role." And I asked Donna Miller, who until recently was the sort of CHRO for Enterprise, sort of the enterprise business outside of the US. I said, "Donna, is this true?" She said, "Yep." She said, "Our system," so I think this plays to your point, more in terms of you've got to sort of build the systems and the cultures around it. You don't get promoted, you can't be promoted. You can, even if your business performance scores are really doing well, unless you can show that you also are effective as a leader on some of these other things, that's it. You stay in that role until you're able to show that you had 3 cycles trending upwards. And he didn't get the job. He had to sit there in jail. It's not the sort of thing you want to hear from your son of an evening, "I'm in jail, Dad," but it was very effective for him. Yeah. So reminded me,
Yes.
Enterprise is one of the businesses that Reichelt originally mentioned in his MPS book, which is a clumsy link to the next area. But I just want to invite folks that are listening in. Love to get any thoughts or additional questions that folks have got on this area of building top-down buy-in. I heard you've got to live it. You've got to show that you mean these values. You've got to make sure that you've built all of the culture and the systems and reward mechanisms around it. And it sounds like it's not easy. You've got to be, I think it was Alex said, you've got to be authentic for this to actually really work. Folks sniff out any lack of authenticity pretty quickly. Okay, any final points on this before we move on to metrics?
I've got a final point actually, just on that authenticity. I think ambassador programs are a great way for companies of all sizes to grow a kind of grassroots movement and to change the culture. So in Deutsche Bank, we have a kind of brand ambassador program, and people are selected across the whole organization, different corporate titles, and they're invited to sort of host their own sessions and to discuss the new brand values and the culture and to criticize it. And it's an open conversation. As soon as that door's shut, you can say what you want. And the idea is that senior management in the brand team, they want everyone from every sort of corner of the organization to feedback and to take what was being kind of presented to them and given and make it their own. And so they're inviting the criticism. And I think that is a really kind of great example of a contemporary approach to, galvanizing support and changing it. Don't just say, here is the culture, here is how we need to reach this goal, this productivity level. Actually get people to be part of that journey. And if they own it and have a voice to change it, then they will drive it forward. And
these are employees, these are colleagues in the business.
Colleagues, yeah.
Moira, can I come back to you then? Because one of the things I saw done really well was at Reckitt Benckiser, when they invite people to do their MPS scores, those that score 9s and 10s, they make those customer ambassadors, Alex, to your point. So they actually create a panel. They thank folks for loving our products, our Coleman's mustard or whatever it is they've loved. And they do nothing more than share with them changes in pack design or changes in, there's no suggestion for a second of any sort of financial or bonusing or discounting. No, it's just holding you closer to the brand. And then if you need to sort of do any sort of research, these are folks who would gladly give up their time and share details. Does that resonate with you more in terms of
It certainly does, actually. And we did some research in the Henley Centre for Customer Management about what customers expect and what the future customer wants. And one of the things they talked about actually was co-creation. I want to be involved. I want to be included.
Yes.
So if you are saying, you're a 9 or a 10 for a Net Promoter Score, to then be approached by the company to ask for more feedback. Equally, if you're scoring them a 1 or a 2, but to have these panels of people that you can actually tap into, because people will often only respond if they want to help, or they've got a vested interest usually. I mean, my bank, who's remaining nameless, I would love to give them a bit of advice and I have done in the past, but a bit of advice and a bit of help. But there's no opportunity to co-create. So I do think that's a really important thing to do, actually, to maybe whether it's a panel or however you do it, but to actually listen to the customer. I mean, there's a whole range, actually. Maybe just remind myself what some of these things are. There was a range of what people wanted for the future. And one, there's personalization as well, and customization. People said that they wanted a perfect customer experience as well. There were a number of things that, people said were really, really important to them in terms of getting the perfect customer experience. So, I think we do have to bear that in mind. But of course, the other thing we have to bear in mind is that our customers are getting much older and more demanding and confident. I don't know if you've seen the aging data, David. This is really depressing, but we've now got more people in the UK who are over the age of 65 than there are under the age of 15. So we've got this aging population, seriously aging population. And, and their needs and their wants and their desires are vastly different to someone who is maybe 15 or 20, So to bear all that in mind as well when we're co-creating with customers and listening to them. And that's when it comes back to design. We need to be listening to those people who perhaps can't read the font size because it's been done by an agent and it's too small. They can't read it. I had to change hotels here a few years ago because the hotel that I was staying in was so dark all the time. I couldn't see a damn thing. I couldn't see where I was going. And it was all stylish and modern and trendy and great, but not otherwise. I just couldn't see in the lift. It was ridiculous.
There's a lovely she's now at Travelodge, Claire Good, who led the experience design for Terminal 2 in Heathrow.
Wow.
They were watching customers' use of bathrooms in the other parts of Heathrow, and they noticed that older people were using the bathrooms a whole lot more. So they presumed it was because they needed to use the bathrooms a whole lot more. But you know why they were using the bathrooms? Because it was quieter there and they could actually hear the announcements better in the bathrooms. You wouldn't have thought of that, would you? But they had to actually ask customers, why are you using the bathroom? I'm using the bathroom because I can hear the announcements better. So don't jump to conclusions. And thank you, Claire.
I love that story.
All right. So happy we move to the next question. Thank you all. And again, please drop any questions you've got into Shadney's chat. I'm hoping you're finding these points useful, folks. We're trying to sort of work out the practical things that you can do. And in particular on this last one, because I think it's really important. Last year, December, the year before, I met the Forrester lead for EMEA at a conference, the last speaker, and she got up and she said, and I'll happily share these slides with anyone. This coming year, we expect 30% of customer experience leaders to be let go. 30% of organizations who have made the link to business performance, we expect them to invest into experience. And I said, that's really sort of chilling. She said, yeah, that's our research evidence. I caught up with her in July. And I said that's proven to be really sort of accurate. She said, no, it's nearer 40%. 40% of people involved in customer experience have either been let go or reassigned. Why? Because I've spoken to 50 plus of them. It's because we didn't prove the link to business performance. Yeah. So if there's one thing that folks do as a result of this call, it's really urgently find 2 or 3 examples that experience translates into cash uniquely. And if you let us go, then you don't get that. So let's get into this for nothing other than the sake of self-preservation. So I'm going to come to you, if I may, Alex, then Janthana, then you, Moira, right? So, Alex, what's been your view of being able to prove that link with business outcomes?
Well, I took a slightly sort of internal approach to this, which was cost saving. So I sort of spun it on its head, and mainly because of the role I'm in, creating and designing. So I sort of analyzed the business online, and I found multiple instances or multiple websites selling and promoting the same kind of messages, same product information, but all built on a technical stack that was unique in each instance. And so the cost to maintain and build these was just, you know, over exaggerated. And so I took more of an analytical approach to sort of show that actually working on experiences is going to help the overall health of the business because of the efficiencies, the savings.
Right.
So it's slightly different for me.
So reducing internal friction, so there's
yeah,
business efficiency, customer effectiveness. You focus on the business efficiency side of the equation.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And you can maybe prove that relatively easy.
Much easier to prove. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's you know, every business has you know, fixed costs and costs budgets that are just never touched. They're never questioned because someone very senior holds them. But if you kind of scratch the surface and look at what people are doing globally, then, and you can see these inefficiencies, then it has to be raised. You do ruffle some feathers, but it is worth it in the end because it's much easier to build a consistent experience if it's managed more centrally rather than a siloed approach. Yeah, and that's not necessarily just for websites, that's for any form of communication. If there aren't efficiencies in how that's produced and distributed, then you're wasting money.
Cool. So Janthana, Alex is saying great experience is good and it works because you're reducing that friction, you're improving business efficiency, getting everybody marching in the same direction. What's been your own experience of being able to prove the link to business outcomes from experience?
Yes. I think for insurance, there are three main metrics that is important for us. One is profitability, how much we sell. Two is operational efficiency. And then the third one is claim. So these are like the three main. For sale is relatively straightforward. You know, if you see like your a total gross written premium go up, then you know that, you know, like yourself improving. The operational efficiency, on the other hand, is slightly more difficult to prove, but there are KPI that we track. So anything from, you know, like kind of how individual perform tasks through to customer satisfaction and net promoter score and things like that. So we do track this. Obviously, you know, like is for us to know when we have managed to improve our operational efficiency. But to some extent, because we set up to be a digital insurance player, the way we do things is more automated, and therefore, you know, we have less of operational efficiency, but more of the other efficiency standpoint, product improvement, anything else that's more of a you know, like problem that we are solving for the industry. So, and then the claim part, the claim is not something that we currently have much dealing with, although we, you know, like we manage our customer relationship and the policy, but the claim itself is managed by a completely separate company and a separate from Tapoly. Having said that, we do make sure that we select risk that within our insurance appetite. So each insurance company, they have their own risk appetite. They like specific risk from specific industry. In a very particular segment, we need to be able to select precisely that, and that making sure that we don't go outside that and cost, you know, like a lot of claims costs for the insurance company that we work with.
You described a bit of a balanced scorecard of claims, operating costs. You also mentioned Net Promoter in there. So you've got all of those pieces of the puzzle. Moira, what's been your experience of leaders actually sort of showing the business impact, the business outcome of investing in experience-based initiatives? Is it widespread? Is it hard?
Sorry? Is it
How
hard?
easy is it? Yes.
Yeah, perhaps before I answer that, I 100% agree with you about this notion about, you know, a lot of CX leaders aren't being employed anymore, and a lot of it's because they're not proving their worth. And it reminds me of a very dear friend of mine many years ago who wanted to become a marketing, he was an engineer and loved marketing. He decided he wanted to go into marketing. And we were all a bit shocked because we thought, well, he has got a marketing background, but what the heck, you know? And he got this job as a marketing director. And after about a year, he called me to say, Moira, I think I'm going to be made redundant. And I said, what do you mean you're going to be made redundant? He said, well, you know, business isn't doing as well as it should be. And I said, but you're really the last person, I said, that should be made redundant. And he said, well, but what have I done? I said, I don't know. What have you done? He said, we've got this amazing logo. The logo is fantastic. We've had the outside of the building painted. It looks amazing. New brochures, new everything. But what he hadn't done, to cut a story short, David, is he hadn't put a stake in the ground. When he took that job, he didn't measure the metrics at that point. So he was not able to prove, as time went on, the difference he'd made to the business. And I think you're absolutely on the money there. And that's exactly the same with customer experience. People aren't actually measuring where they are now and therefore where they should be. And when I'm talking about this to groups of people, I say in the old days, it was pretty straightforward. It was like driving a car. You know, you might measure a few simple things like market share, customer profitability, brand awareness, or whatever. Nowadays, it's like flying an aeroplane. And there are lots of different metrics that we should be looking at on an ongoing basis, from customer, you know, not just profitability, but customer profitability, you know, customer retention rates, defection rates, all sorts of things. But my favorite scores, which I've seen companies use very, very successfully, is you mentioned Fred Reichheld with Net Promoter Score, but I am a great fan now of measuring ease of doing business. And I think ease of doing business is an amazing score that drives the Net Promoter Score and drives profitability. So I think measuring your ease of doing business is, and that comes back to actually what Alex was talking about in a way, you know, the online experience and efficiency, and also comes back to what Janthana was talking about as well with operational efficiency. So I think we can look at ease of doing business, I'm a great fan of, still measure customer satisfaction and still measure Net Promoter Score as well, I think are some of the key things. And companies that do that you know, can really justify and show that they are making improvements in terms of customer retention and customer profitability.
You've got several thumbs up scrolling up the screen, Moira, in response to that. But you know, one of the if we're in retail, there are some great examples of folks doing this really well. And one that sort of towers above everybody else is the business called Zappos. They're a US-based business. They were in footwear. The founder sadly died, and the business was acquired by Amazon. Why do I mention Zappos? Well, there's an absolutely incredible person there called Alex Genov. Folks should follow Alex. Alex, a behavioral psychologist by training, leads on all things insight and experience there. And what Alex has done since he arrived there was he picked up their customer satisfaction survey and carried on doing that. He also added to it Reichheld's Net Promoter Score. If you've not read Reichheld's book, then you absolutely should. If you haven't read Reichheld's book, ping me a note, david.hicks@xmcoach.com, and I'll send you a free HBR article. If you can't afford to read the book, I'll send you those because I bought thousands of them a while ago, and I've still got a load to give away. But Fred's work ostensibly says it's a predictor of future business performance. If your Net Promoter Score, your 9s and 10s, subtracted from your 0 to 6s, trends up, your business performance is going to trend up. If it trends down, your business performance is going to trend down. And that was 15 years ago he wrote the book. And he's recently, well, a year and a half ago, published a second book, which basically said people have become fixated with the number. Right? It's not the number that's important, it's the trend that's important. And that's why Moira's point around Net Easy Score. How easy was it to do business with us? Same 0 to 10 point scale, you net your promoters, your highs and lows. and that is trending up. It's got a higher correlation of future business performance than Net Promoter Score. The conference board, who did the original paper on that, did some really excellent work around the potency of Net Easy Score. It seems to work better in B2B than in B2C, and it's something that Alex has been using at Zappos. But the reason for mentioning this is he was saying all of those scores were losing their alignment, their predictability. So he started to use something called Net Trust Score. Does Zappos always have my best interests at heart? And that seems to have an even tighter correlation with business performance, and also seems to be sort of working with that sort of thing that Gartner was saying around total experience. Trust seems to be an underpinning factor for your customers, your colleagues, and your partners. And you can use the same measure across all those audiences. So Alex doesn't say stop doing any one of them. He's saying add Net Trust Score to your portfolio, but above all, use them. The measuring isn't important. It's actually having the systematic approach to actually using them. So enough of my lecture. Does any of that resonate with Alex, Janthana, with you, Moira, in terms of the use of metrics? Janthana, you're nodding. Why are you nodding then, Janthana? Got any personal experience of that? I think you're muted. Janthana,
yes, I don't have anything to add other than, like I agree with your rationale and your comments.
Cool, that's good. To the point. Anybody else want to add to the metrics point? Use of metrics. We've got a couple of questions here in addition to that. So make sure you've got that line in the sand that Moira said. When you start off in your role, get a line in the sand. However many buildings you paint or new leaflets you've got, unless you can show the improvement in business performance as a result of you being there, go for it. And if you do nothing else, if you find your advocates, your 9s and 10s, because they'll be out there, and just throw your arms around those people and say, do you know what? You're clearly a discerning purchaser of mustard or whatever. Make it easy for folks to advocate on your behalf. I'm not sure if folks remember when Bose headphones first came out, those clamshell ones, and I got my first Bose headphones in a clamshell, and inside the clamshell was a little holder for business cards, and it said, you will doubtless be asked about these headphones. Please give this card to anybody that asks you so you can tell them about it. And they made it really easy for advocates to advocate for their business. So find your 9s and 10s and make it really easy for them to advocate your business. Okay, so we've got some more questions. One question from Marilini. Could we maybe talk a bit about co-creation and how might that work in the sort of BFSI sector? We've got 15 minutes, so maybe time for 2 of these questions. So who wants to pitch in on co-creation? Who's got experience of co-creation in this sector? It looks like it's heading your way, Alex. I mean, do you use co-creation?
Are we talking about content co-creation?
The principle of co-creation, getting folks together to co-create, maybe across functions with customers.
So in the work we've done in financial services and co-creation is really where you are working with your customers to do things better for the customer ultimately. So you may say, Moira, how do you find banking with Deutsche Bank or whatever? And you go, well, actually, do you know what I find really frustrating? And so you're having a conversation about how you can make a better experience.
Cool.
And I think
Janthana?
Yes. Our SaaS business. So part of what we do is to provide technology solution to insurance industry, and that part had to be co-created. And the reason for that is each customer need bespoke flow and process. So, whether it's going to be a question set or the policy and the whole a backend suite that each customer need, they would be completely bespoke, tailored according to them. So at as part of that process, we will look at to see, like how can we make the flow a little bit more efficient, and we use a lot of data to automate, and now also AI that we're trying to implement for our customer.
Can we stick with that for a second, though? In practical terms, I was chairing an event last week, and an amazing guy from B&Q said, we've got a whole range of delivery partners, a whole range of product partners and so on. We collaborate and co-create by getting people into the room. They have to physically leave their name badges outside, right? So they're no longer working for DHL, they're in as a contributor. And it sounds like you've got these very significant commercial partners, Janthana, and you get them into a room and you want to have a conversation about how to improve things. How easy is it to actually encourage folks to take a sort of a collaborative mindset when you've got these clear commercial considerations as well? How practical is that?
Usually people come to us because they wanted something slightly more off the shelf, and like something that are going to be quick to market. And what I tend to do is that we use our own experience of building the technology, show them what we can do, and then they say, okay, I like this part, I don't like that part, and then like through that alterations, we get to the final design, and then we build at the back of it. Yes.
Cool. And then you have the commercial conversations once you've got...
Yes, commercial conversations is kind of ongoing from like when they decided that, okay, they're going to go with us, then we start that initial state of building the demo, building the prototype, and then agree on the design before we start. Yes,
that makes sense. We have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to invite folks to reflect on their single piece they recommend folks take away from this call. But whilst they're reflecting on that, we've got time for our last question here, a very honest question. It says, a lot of my team are averse to failing. How do I encourage innovation and experimentation to encourage them to try new strategies? So a bit of risk taking there. So who wants to maybe offer any suggestions as to how do you encourage that innovation, risk taking environment? And then we'll go to our single insights at the end. So who wants to pitch in? You're smiling at the at that, Janthana. What is it about the encouraging risk taking?
It's the culture that the leader create for their team. I think if you are a innovative leaders, you tend to bring innovation to your organization and also to your team, because you will be more open to new idea. You will be more encouraging when people talk about like their innovation or what they think that we should do internally. So it's down to leaders, I think, to open that discussion and having that innovative, embrace innovation culture within the firm.
And it feels like you living it as well. Again, the way you're describing this.
I have to lead by example. So, like that's the thing about being a leader, is that you have to lead by example. You can't expect people within your organization to be embracing innovation when you're not. So you have to, yes.
You can't expect people to embrace innovation when you're not. And it's a beautiful line, that one. Thank you for that. Who else wants to pitch in on the encouraging a bit of risk taking and innovation? Moira, you're flagging.
Yeah, I have to say I like that line as well. Also, I'd say is that I was aware of one company that really struggled with this problem. I don't know if you know a company called HomeServe, but HomeServe, you pay sort of monthly insurance and they will come out and fix your boiler for you, or if you've got a leak, a pipe leaking water in the house, or what, they'll come and fix these things. And they really wanted to encourage people to be innovative, but they've struggled because it's a very operationally efficient company. There's a problem, you go and fix it. So there just wasn't time for innovation, but they really wanted this. So their solution to that in the end was to set up a separate unit which was about innovation and creativity. And they were given the time, because 3M, for example, they are given half a day a week to go and be innovative and creative. But so this subunit was given the time to go and be creative, come up with ideas. And because it was in the insurance world, they found that one of the biggest problems they had is that if you had a leak in your bathroom, in your kitchen, say there's a leaking pipe under the kitchen floor, you don't discover it until the furniture's destroyed, the floor's destroyed. It's a real mess. That meant that the company then had to pay to have all that fixed. So it was costing the company a lot in terms of claims. So the innovation unit came up with the idea of coming up with, it's like I haven't got it here, coming up with a little clip. It's like a hair clip. And you clip it on a pipe that comes into the house. And this clip monitors the water flow coming into the house, and it's linked to your phone. So if you get an alert saying, you're using loads more water, they know there's a burst pipe, so they can come and fix it before it causes a problem. So that's how they solve that problem, is because they said not everybody's creative, not everybody's innovative. So let's get the creative and innovative people together, let them work in a little unit, and we can do it that way. It's just another perspective of perhaps how to do it, because I do agree with Janthana, but not everybody is, has leaders that are like that. So what can you do if you're not?
Okay, I'm going to do a round robin in a second, asking for their key takeaway. But before we do, Alex, what's been your experience of encouraging folks to innovate and take a few risks?
I guess I mean, I agree with both key messages, but it's also about timing.
Timing?
Timing as in when there's
Right.
a good time in the year for reflection, for that kind of brainstorming session. Because if you're, sort of halfway through a kind of program, whatever that program of change is, it's much harder to kind of get people's attention and get them to stop and rethink something and be creative. So I would say sort of, yes, show those kind of values in your leadership style, but also make sure that, sometimes if you're pitching an idea for change, then you've only got one shot to do that within a time frame. So make sure you pick the right time. So for example, autumn is within our organization is budget planning. So we're looking for next year. So now would be the time to kind of raise questions and raise ideas, not, March the 1st, because it's spring and we're sort of excited about that. It's, just getting the right time for sessions, brainstorming sessions, workshops is really important.
Know when to do it. Cool. Well, thank you all. I want to invite each, and I'll go reverse order. Actually, I'll go Alex, Janthana, Moira. Thank you all for your contribution to the session. Is there a single thing that's surfaced for you that folks should consider taking away and acting on? It's an impossible thing to try and do, to wrestle 90 minutes into a single line. But Alex, what struck you?
I think
recommend folks.
I mean, I've this is from my own personal experience as well. Working in departments that aren't the front office, they're not in a sales role. You have to always link back to the business and what the business is trying to do to prove that link and that value of your team, yourself, your offering and what you actually do in the business, because you have to be not a jack of all trades, but you have to be that kind of Bono with 6 hats these days in any organization, in any sector. You have to understand the mechanics of a business, the finances, the pressures, even if it's your job to deliver the milk or design the brochure or whatever it is you do. Without that, you will sink.
You mentioned to be the bridge and to be the person that unites. I mean, I love those points from earlier. Thank you. Janthana, what's been your single thing that surfaced for you that you recommend folks take away?
Yes, I think I'm just going to reiterate what Moira had mentioned earlier about personalization. So I think, a company should focus on adding value, and around product development for us, personalization is very important. And I see that as a trend not the trend is already in, but this is something that is going to be, you see more and more personalized insurance products coming out.
Yep. With the digital lead at Decathlon the other day, and he was suggesting that they'll be able to personalize every individual customer's product very soon. So that's what's setting people's expectations. Thank you, Janthana. Moira, what about you? Any key thing that you'd like folks to take away?
I agree with both of those, but for me, it's really about customer insight. You know, really getting close to your customers, understanding them almost better than they understand themselves. So understanding what keeps them awake at night, what the challenges are that they're facing, what their goals are, and how you can serve the customer better. How can you do things better for the customer than your competitors? So it's about focusing on your downstream activities, really. And I think that therefore being more market driving. You're in the driving seat, you're dictating the rules of engagement. So get close to your customers, because if you do that, everything else then works.
Great point. And you mentioned that at the start, Moira, about helping do things better for the customer. And I'm reminded every day, the one thing that I did early on in my career was I physically got out and knocked on the doors of 200 customers and asked them, so why did they react in the way that they did, and getting systematic about then using those insights. It really paid dividends. So Shadni, I want to hand the baton back to yourself. Thank you so much for pulling this together, and I want to personally thank not only CXM for putting the session together, but the honest, objective, dispassionate, very practical insights from our incredible bunch of speakers. My thanks to yourselves.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been an interesting journey of a conversation, I must say, and I'm happy to jump in right now. From customer safaris and customer ambassadors to being purpose-driven leaders and leveraging these new metrics that cradle NPS, so to speak. Alex, Janthana, Moira, David, it's been a pleasure listening to you guys. A big thank you once again to you all. And of course, to all of you who are watching, we look forward to continuing these kind of conversations and hosting more of such events in the future. Stay connected with us by following our LinkedIn page for industry insights. That's it. We hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye.